In June 2025, 6 people are scheduled to be executed in the United States, 2 in Florida and 1 each in Alabama, South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Mississippi. In this video, we'll take a look at the crimes they committed, how long they've been on death row, and other key details about their cases, appeals, and how they're going to be executed. Anthony Wainwright, June 10, 2025. On June 10, 2025 at 6 p.m., Anthony Floyd Wainwright, aged 54, is scheduled to be executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison in Rayford. Governor Ron DeSantis signed the death warrant on May 9, 2025, for Wainwright's conviction in the 1994 murder of 23-year-old Carmen Gayhart. Anthony Wainwright kidnapped Carmen Gayhart on April 27, 1994, with his partner Richard Eugene Hamilton. Both culprits were escapees from the prison. Gayhart was abducted when she was loading her groceries into her car at the Winn-Dixie Supermarket's parking lot. They both took her to a remote area in Hamilton County, Florida, where they sexually assaulted her and then killed her. After that, they fled the crime scene. Both criminals were arrested on April 28, 1994, in Mississippi, after engaging in a gunfight with the Mississippi police. Upon investigation, both revealed the place where they took Carmen. On 2 May 1994, at approximately 7 a.m., Carmen's decomposed remains were found. Anthony Wainwright and Richard Hamilton were charged with multiple offenses, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, sexual assault, and robbery. On June 12, 1995, both culprits were sentenced to death. Over the years, Wainwright filed multiple appeals, but all his appeals were denied. Both culprits were sentenced to death on July 12, 1995. On January 13, 2023, Hamilton died while on death row. Meanwhile, Anthony Wainwright is scheduled to be executed on June 10, 2025. According to the law of Florida, he will be executed by lethal injection. Execution date set: Thomas Lee Goodinus to be put to death on June 24th. Thomas Lee Goodinus, 51, is scheduled to be executed by lethal injection on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, at 6 p.m. at Florida State Prison in Rayford. He was convicted in 1995 for the rape and murder of 22-year-old Michelle McGrath in downtown Orlando, Florida, on May 23, 1994. On May 23, 1994, Goodinus and his roommates drank and smoked marijuana before going to Barbarella's nightclub. When the bar closed at 3 a.m., Goodinus was missing. The victim, McGrath, was last seen leaving the club around 2:45 a.m. Her body was found at 7:30 a.m. near Pace School, showing signs of blunt force trauma and sexual assault. The estimated time of death was between 3 and 5 a.m. A woman named Rochelle Smith testified that Goodinus tried to break into her car and sexually assault her in the same parking lot earlier that night. Another witness, Colbert Presley, found McGrath's keys and clothes and later gave them to Goodinus, who claimed they were his. A school employee, Jane Brand, also saw Goodinus on the property shortly before discovering McGrath's body. Goodinus's roommates said he was not home after the bar closed and later returned with blood on his underwear and scratches on his knuckles. 2 of them said he admitted to killing and raping McGrath. Thomas Lee Goodinus was arrested in May 1994, shortly after the murder of Michelle McGrath. It was later found out that, as a juvenile, Goodinus had several felony convictions in Massachusetts in the early 1990s. Goodinus appealed several times, but was rejected. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the death warrant on May 23, 2025. Goodinus is scheduled to be executed by lethal injection on June 24, 2025. Death row's longest inmate, Richard Gerald Jordan. Richard Gerald John was born on May 25, 1946 in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Richard served in the Vietnam War and later worked in various jobs, including managing a fertilizer plant and working in a shipyard. By the mid-1970s, Jordan was married with 3 children, but some financial problems occurred. To solve his problems, he decided to kidnap a rich person for ransom. On January 12, 1976, he called Gulf National Bank in Gulfport and learned that Charles Chuck Martyr was the commercial loan officer. Using a telephone directory, he located Martyr's address. Posing as an electric company worker, Jordan went to the Martyr residence. Finding only Edwina Martyr, Charles's wife, and their 3-year-old son at home, he kidnapped Edwina, leaving the child behind. Jordan forced Edwina to drive into the DeSoto National Forest, where he fatally shot her in the back of the head. He then contacted Charles Martyr, falsely claiming Edwina was safe and demanding a $25,000 ransom. Jordan's attempt to collect the ransom failed, and he was apprehended the following day. He confessed to the crime and in July 1976 was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. However, legal challenges ensued. His initial death sentence was vacated due to unconstitutional sentencing procedures. Over the years, Jordan was sentenced to death 4 times, each followed by appeals and legal battles. After nearly 5 decades on death row, the Mississippi Supreme Court set Jordan's execution date for June 25, 2025. At 78, he is the state's oldest and longest-serving death row inmate. Stephen Stanko, The Double Life of a Convicted Killer. Stephen Stanko was born on January 13, 1968, at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, Cuba. In 1996, he was convicted of assault and kidnapping, serving over 8 years in prison. During his jail time, he jointly wrote a book titled Living in Prison, A History of the Correctional System with an Insider's View. After he got out of prison in 2004, Stanko moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He tried to fit back into society, acted like he had changed, got involved in the community, and looked for a job. After 1 year, he moved in with his librarian girlfriend, Laura Ling. On April 7, 2005, Stanko strangled his girlfriend, Laura Ling, and assaulted her teenage daughter, slitting her throat. Miraculously, the daughter survived and made 911 calls for help. The following day, Stanko visited his 74-year-old friend, Henry Turner, in Conway. Under the guise of a friendly visit, he shot Turner twice, resulting in his death. Stanko then stole Turner's vehicle and financial assets. Stanko was located in Augusta, Georgia. On April 12, 2005, Stanko was arrested without incident. In 2006, Stanko was convicted of the murder of Laura Ling and the assault on her daughter, receiving a death sentence and additional prison terms. In 2009, he was convicted of the murder of Henry Turner, resulting in a second death sentence. During his trials, Stanko's lawyers said he was insane because of brain problems, but the courts found him guilty, saying his crimes were carefully planned. Over the years, Stanko filed multiple appeals, challenging his convictions and sentences. In May 2025, The South Carolina Supreme Court denied his final appeal, setting his execution date for June 13, 2025. Tulsa County Double Murder. G. John Fitzgerald Hansen. John Fitzgerald Hansen is scheduled to be executed by lethal injection in Oklahoma on June 12, 2025, for the murder of Mary Bowles in 1999. On August 31, 1999, 77-year-old Mary Agnes Bowles, a retired banker, was abducted from a shopping mall parking lot in Tulsa by John Hansen and his accomplice, Victor Miller. Earlier, they both had robbed a liquor store. They wanted to rob Mary's car. The pair forced Bowles into her car and drove her to a remote gravel pit near Owasso. Coincidentally, the dirt pit's owner, 44-year-old Gerald Max Thurman, witnessed the abduction and was shot by Miller. Shortly after, Bowles was shot 4 to 6 times by Hansen. Afterwards, Hansen and Miller partially covered up the body with branches and escaped the area. The body of Bowles was found a week later on September 7, 1999. On September 9, 1999, Hansen and Miller were both arrested at a local motel for robbing a federal credit union on September 8. Hansen was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death in 2001. Miller received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for his role in the crimes. Over the years, Hansen filed multiple appeals, challenging his conviction and sentence. His legal team argued that he suffered from autism spectrum disorder and was manipulated by Miller, who they claimed was the mastermind behind the crimes. Despite these efforts, Hansen's appeals were denied, and his death sentence was upheld. Initially serving a life sentence for a separate federal bank robbery conviction in Louisiana, Hansen was transferred to Oklahoma in March 2025 to face execution. The Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals set his execution date for June 12, 2025. Gregory Hunt, Alabama. Gregory Hunt is scheduled to be executed on June 10, 2025 in Alabama using nitrogen gas. In 1988, Hunt was convicted of the brutal murder of Karen Lane in Cordova, Alabama. In the early morning hours of August 2, 1988, Karen Lane, a 26-year-old woman, was found brutally murdered in the apartment she shared with her friend, Tina Gilliland, in Cordova, Alabama. Hunt was arrested after confessing to his sister and a jailhouse informant. According to court records, Hunt had been dating Lane for about a month before her death. On August 2, 1988, he broke into her apartment, where he sexually assaulted and murdered her. The autopsy showed Lane had about 60 injuries, with 20 of them on her head. Hunt was convicted on 3 counts of capital murder by a jury in 1990 and was sentenced to death. 2 of the counts alleged Hunt sexually assaulted Lane. The other said Hunt killed her during a robbery. Hunt's conviction and sentence were upheld on appeal. Hunt is currently at Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama.